Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Tony, this is so great you can't believe it. I believe it, Charlie.
Space is big. Really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the grocery store, but that's just peanuts to space. The distances we're talking about are so incomprehensibly big that I try to put it in a simpler way. If we were to hop on a beam of light and travel with it at the maximum possible speed in the universe, the speed of light, it would take us 4.4 years to get to the nearest star next to ours. Not much. Well, knowing that in just 1 second, light travels around the planet Earth 7 times, and it takes it 8 minutes to get to us from the Sun. If a light beam were to travel for 4 years, that's an awfully huge distance. Now think about this. No stars in our galaxy are that distant from one another on average. There are millions and millions of stars just in our galaxy alone. Now picture the fact there are just as many galaxies with just as many stars in the visible universe alone, and each of those massive celestial objects are on average separated by the distance of a light beam traveling for 13 million years. It gets hard to wrap your brain around that, but that's exactly the point. Space is that big. For a long time it was considered that space was our final frontier, a place reserved only for the stars in the night sky. But that all changed as we now know, so let's start from the beginning. In the early days of the 20th century, man broke his earthly bonds by taking flight for the first time. It began just like this. These wooden creations seemed to defy gravity by cleverly using the laws of mechanics and fluid dynamics. And so, humanity took to the skies, but unfortunately, they were still homebound. After some time in the infernal forge that was World War II, there emerged a new creation, the rocket. This invention, mainly created for the purposes of ending life, with inspirations from visionaries like Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, gave humanity the capability to set their sights to the stars, and would eventually give birth to space travel as we know it. It all started ambitiously, although having military and strategic capabilities mostly in mind. The USA's and the USSR space programs were born. The organization that led to the US space program was called NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And so, the space race was on.
2, 1, 0, all engine running.
Well, it's one for the money, two for the show.
The Soviets took the lead. There was Sputnik 1, the first satellite to be launched into orbit. Then there was Sputnik 2, carrying with it the first ever animal, the dog Laika, into space.
Step in my face, slander my name all over the place. We'll do anything that you want to do.
Then after a series of probes and satellites, on the 12th of April in 1961, Vostok 1, carrying Yuri Gagarin, sent man into the heavens for the very first time. Even though it seemed that NASA had lost the space race, they were not deterred. And then on 24th of July 1969, just 100 years from Jules Verne's historical classic, Neil Armstrong took his first steps on the surface of the moon. Many missions later, by the late 70s, it seemed that the space program had died out. People no longer cared much for space exploration. They were way too busy worrying about the conditions on Earth to focus on the wonders and possibilities that space held. But at the turn of the century, along with the missions that built the International Space Station, space had its second wind. With missions to Mars, Titan and the Rosetta mission, people were once again enchanted. And so, in the early 2020s, the Asteroid Redirect mission was launched by NASA. This mission consisted of gathering small asteroids and redirecting them into a stable lunar orbit where scientists could study them. This was all in preparation to master the technology needed for the missions to Mars, scheduled in the 2030s. First phase of the ARM was launched on the 9th of March 2021 with a Cerberus module, a new type of spacecraft designed for the purpose of capturing small asteroids, was set out for the asteroid 911979 RQ6, nicknamed Plymouth. By the year 2025, there were already 6 asteroids captured in a stable lunar orbit. On them, there were found large quantities of metals such as iron, aluminum and copper. By this point, Phase 2 for the project was suggested, setting up mining colonies on the stable asteroids in the asteroid belt. An ambitious endeavor, but with the low gravity conditions of these objects, infrastructure was not only possible, but also created an opportunity for asteroid-based space stations and the seeds of solar colonization. And so, on the 10th of August 2031, Gaia 1 landed on the surface of Vesta. Due to problems with the missions to Mars, priority was given to the ARM's second phase, and so, by the 1st of September 2042, the first settlement and mining colony, Uruk Prime, was formed on Vesta with a population of 1,000. The settlement was designed ingeniously. It uses the ice from underneath the surface, dug up by the mining complex, and afterwards, using high-tech filtration systems, the water is recycled up to 99% purity and with negligible losses. The rest of the water is broken down into oxygen, used in the life support system, and hydrogen, used for additional energy. The whole thing is powered by a massive solar farm on the west side of the dwarf planet. As for food, a huge part of the settlement is multi-purposed as a farm/garden, with its main crop being a genetically modified plant. Today, that might seem barbaric to us, only having one type of food, but that was all that was possible with the technology of the day. They used an assortment of spices to create different flavors from different cultures. To prevent issues with communication, 6 months prior, NASA, ESA and China launched an array of satellites stationed around the asteroid belt. This way, even when Uruk Prime was on the opposite side of the solar system, communications could be maintained. The settlement is designed in a way that in case of a breach, each section can be sealed off and/or ejected from Vesta. This also is the evacuation procedure, where in case of a problem, the whole settlement, or parts of it, can be detached and function as a spacecraft. After all, this was just the first settlement of its kind, but like Armstrong walking on the moon, a small step for man, but giant leap for space exploration. But not all things were bright and colorful on Earth. Due to military conflicts and the global economy, not many people were too keen on spending billions of dollars on space projects. riots began forming near the launch platforms in protest. After years, the protests stopped due to newfound peace on Earth. The entire globe joined hands in the effort to colonize the inner solar system. By the year 2088, there were 13 colonies stationed around the asteroid belt and 5 bigger ones on Mars. With the technology evolving, these settlements supported 5% of the population on Earth. Spaceships using ion drives and solar sails could reach these distances within days, causing intrasolar travel to become a mundane thing. Also, orbital manufacturing facilities were situated in lunar orbit. The resources gathered from the colonies would be transported to these moon bases, which would be used to produce spaceships and settlement modules. Mankind has broken the ties that bind it to the Earth and set out to a journey among the stars. And now, at the dawning of the 22nd century, science fiction has become science fact, and the future has never looked so bright.